Masechta Shkalim Per Gimel Mishnah Aleph. B'shleisha Prakam Bashan Terminus Halishka. After the Shkalim were collected and brought to Yerushalayim, they were placed in a special room in the Beis HaMikdash, in B'sayich Lishka Achas Sheba Mikdash, and 3 times a year a portion of the money was withdrawn from this Lishka to buy the Karbanos Tzibur. This, when they would withdraw the money from the Beis HaMikdash, it was referred to as a truma, raising, since a portion of the coins were removed from the larger amount that was there. So, b'shleisha prokim b'ashana terminus halishka, 3 times during the year, they would withdraw a portion of the shkalim from the lishka in the Beis HaMikdash where the money is kept. They did not withdraw all the funds needed for the year at one time, because the shkalim of those living far away from Yerushalayim had not yet arrived. Although the truma that was removed was taken on behalf of every 1 shekel, even those that had not yet arrived in Yerushalayim, that every yid had a share in the offerings purchased with the shkalim withdrawn on the first date, the chachamim nevertheless were masakin during the trumas shekel, and 3 different times during the year. This was done to ensure that everyone's shekel would have a chance of being among those from which the offerings were actually purchased. When were they? B'freis HaPesach, 15 days before Pesach, which would be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The word price actually means half, which is Shleishim Yom Kaidem, the Yom Tov. The Chacham instituted that one should begin studying the halachas Shloshim Yom Kaidem HaChag, 15 days before Yom Tov. The midpoint of those 30 days of preparation for the Yom Tov was known as the price, the halfway mark of the upcoming Yom Tov. So 15 days before Pesach, B'freis HaTzeres, 15 days before Shavuos, B'freis HaChag, and 15 days before Sukkot, which would be the last day of Elul. It wouldn't be on Rosh Hashanah, but it would be the last day of Elul. These dates apply to the halacha of Ma'aser Behema as well, according to one Tana. The Mishnah therefore digresses to cite the machlekes as to the times of Ma'aser Behema. The Torah commands us to separate 1/10 of cattle, sheep, and goats born into our herds and flocks each year. The Chachamim fixed 3 set times during the year to separate the Ma'aser Behema from the animals born between these times, and the Mishnah brings the 3-way machlekes as to what these three times are. And the Divrei Rabbi Kiva says that these 3 dates, 15 days before Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, are also the Geiren times for Ma'aser Behema, meaning the times when newborn animals become forbidden until they are gemaisert. On these dates, any animals born since the previous Geiren date become forbidden and must be gemaisert. Although the Torah gives us a mitzvah to separate Ma'aser Behema from the newborns of our herds and flocks, there's no chiv deraisa to shecht and eat such animals before Ma'aser has been separated. However, the Chacham fixed 3 times during the year when all newborns not previously gemaiser become asur midrabanan to be shechted and eaten until they are gemaiser. The word geiren, which literally means threshing floor, is borrowed from the Ma'aser of Dagon, where the grain becomes forbidden to be eaten before you take off Ma'aser after it's threshed and turned into a pile and placed in the geiren. The reason the Chacham chose these dates is that a large number of animals were required in Yerushalayim during the Yom Tov for all the Yidden who came from all over Eretz Yisrael, and even people who came from Chutz La'aretz to bring to the Beis HaMikdash, as the Torah says. So people who raise cattle, sheep, and goats are generally not sell or shech their newborn animals until after they meiser them, since they wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of separating meiser. The Chacham therefore fixed the times for separating the Ma'aser Behema shortly before each Yom Tov, so that there would be an ample supply of animals available for purchase in time for the Yom Tovim. Ben Azai says that the 3 times for Ma'aser Behema are Be'eser Tisha B'Adar, on the 29th of the month of Adar, which is 15 days before Pesach, Be'echad B'Sivan, and on the 1st of the month of Sivan, which is 5 days before Shavuos, Be'eser Tisha B'Av, and on the 29th of the month of Av, which is a month before Rabbi Kiva's date. What's the svar over here? Ben Azai agrees with Rabbi Kiva that the first date for separating Ma'aser Behema is 15 days before Pesach. However, he holds that Adar, the month before Nisan, always contains just 29 days. It's always a chaser. So 15 days before Pesach will always fall on the 29th of Adar. Rabbi Kiva, however, holds that Adar can sometimes be malay, depending on the Eidim who saw the new moon when they come to Bezdin. So 15 days before Pesach sometimes falls on the 29th of Adar and sometimes on the 30th. Rabbi Kiva therefore says simply 15 days before Pesach, and meaning it's only going to be off by 1 day. Be'echad B'Sivan, and on the first day of Sivan, what's that about? Since only a small number of animals are usually born between the end of Adar and Shavuos, Ben Azai is concerned that if Ma'aser was separated 15 days before Shavuos, many animals would already be sold and eaten by the time Shavuos arrives, and this would result in a shortage of animals for the Yom Tov for Shavuos. Therefore, Ben Azai sets the date for separating the Ma'aseh Behema closer to Shavuos. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, let's go back to the last thing that Ben Azai said was on the 29th of Av. What's that about? Animals born in 2 different years cannot be counted together for the purpose of Meiser, via the Mishnah Zaktam Cheres Parak Tes. Ben Azai is not sure. He's uncertain whether the new year for Ma'aseh Behema starts on the 1st of Elul or on the first day of Tishrei. He therefore fixes the third date for separating Ma'aseh Behema on the last day of Av, so that the animals born in the next month, Elul, will not be counted together with the animals born before Elul. Animals born in Elul have to be gemaishet by themselves, l'shitas Ben Azai, as before in the Rab Dorton in Bechiris. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, Emrem, be'echad b'Nisan, be'echad b'Sivan, be'eser m'Tisha be'Elul. On the first of the month of Nisan, which is 14 days before Pesach, Rabbi Elazar and Reb Shimon hold that the halachas of the Yom Tovim are studied for 2 weeks before the festival, Keshitas Rem Gamliel and the Gemara Psachim Davavam and Beis, and not 30 days before, as Rabbi Kiva holds. Since separating the Ma'aseh Behema is a form of preparing for the Yom Tov, because it makes more animals available for the use on the Yom Tov, they fixed the date for separating Ma'aseh Behema as the first day of Nisan, which would be 2 weeks before Pesach. Be'echad b'Sivan, on the first day of the month of Sivan, just like Ben Azai said, be'eser m'Tisha be'Elul, and on the 29th of the month of Elul, which would be 15 days before Sukkot. Elul was almost always just 29 days. Mepnema Amru be'eser m'Tisha be'Elul. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon now explain why, in regard to the third date, they give a date that's 15 days before the festival and not 14. Mepnema Amru be'eser m'Tisha be'Elul. Why did the Chachamim say on the 29th of Elul, which is the 15 days before Sukkot, Amru be'echad b'Tishrei, which is 14 days before Sukkot, as they said in regard to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is 14 days before Pesach. Like the Mishnah of Bnei Yom Tov, because the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah. We have Shalasa b'Yom Tov, and we don't take off Ma'aseh Behema on Yom Tov. The procedure of separating Ma'aseh Behema is as follows. All the newborns are gathered into a pen that has an opening large enough for only one animal to pass through. The owner counts the animals as they exit and marks every 10th animal with the red dye, declaring Hareza Meiser, marking an animal with dyes forbidden on Yom Tov because it's Soiveya. It's coloring, it's dyeing. Therefore, they advanced the date of the animal Meiser to the 29th of Elul, the day before Rosh Hashanah. Alright, Mishnah Beis. So that's a little bit about Shkolim, that's a little bit about Ma'aseh Behema, and we see how they connect with each other. Mishnah Beis. B'shalish kupis shal shalish saw and tarminas halishka. With the 3 baskets of 3 saw, a saw is a measure of volume ranging in modern equivalents from 2.2 to 3.8 gallons. It's a pretty big-sized kupa, a basket or a box probably. Tarminas halishka, they withdrew the truma of shkolim from the lishka, from the room, the office, in which the money is kept. They first fill 1 basket with coins, then a second, then a third, until they have a total of 9 saw of coins. This was not done in one large 9 saw basket, rather with 3 smaller 3 saw baskets. The reason they use specifically 3 baskets is based on a pasuk mentioned in the Gemara. And because of Ben Aleph Beis Gimel, and upon them, meaning upon these boxes or baskets, was written the letters of the Aleph Beis Gimel, 1 letter in each basket, so that the money can be spent in the order in which it was withdrawn. First, the shkolim of the Aleph basket were used to buy the Karban Tzibur, then the shkolim from the base basket, then the shkolim from the Gimel basket. This is because priority is always given to that which becomes available for the mitzvah first. Rabbi Yishmael Omer Yevonus Kosev Behen Alpha Beisa Gamla. Rabbi Yishmael says it wasn't Hebrew letters, rather it was Greek letters, alpha, beta, and gamma were written on them. The reason the Greek alphabet was used in the Beis HaMikdash was to fulfill Noach's bracha to Yafes, Yaftel Kim Yafes, Yishkem Ba'alei Shem. The Chacham understood this pasuk this way: let the Greek language, which is the most beautiful of all the languages of the children of Yafes, dwell in the Beis HaMikdash, which is Oyolei Shel Shem. Yafyafisa Shel Yafes, Yishkem Ba'alei Shem. Ve'en lecha lashon Yafa b'bnei Yafes kamay lashon Yavanis. And there's a lot of talk about this Binyan Chanukah, which Mitzvah Shem will get to, and as we spoke in previous years. Eina term nichnas lebe fargut chofus of lebe minol v'lebe sandal v'lebe tefillin v'lebe kameya. Certain restrictions were placed upon the person who withdraws the shkolim from the lishka, so that he shouldn't be suspected of taking coins for himself. The one who withdraws the truma of the lishka may not enter the lishka where the shkolim are kept with a hemmed garment, v'lebe minol v'lebe sandal, or with a shoe or with a sandal, so that he shouldn't be suspected of hiding coins in the hem of the garment or dropping coins into his shoe or sandal. not with tefillin or an amulet. An amulet is an inscribed piece of parchment or a packet of herbs worn to protect the wearer from illnesses or other dangers. The kameya is placed in a leather pouch and worn around the neck. If the person who withdraws the shkalim would enter wearing tefillin or a kameya, he might be suspected of opening them and hiding the money inside. Shema yani, maybe he'll become poor. Me'avayin halish geheni. V'yomra, the people will say, Me'avayin halish geheni. For he might one day become poor, and people will say about him, he became poor because of the aveira of stealing from the lishka. Shema yashir v'yamim mitrumas halishka heshir. Or he might someday become rich, and people will say about him, he has become rich from stealing from the truma of the lishka. At the end of the day, Lamaisa Moshe Rabbeinu was accused of doing this exact thing, but that's a different shmuz. Parshas Kisisa, Mayakal Pekude, let's talk about that. Lefisha Adam Tzarech Lotzisi the Habrius. For a person must satisfy the scrutiny of people, Kederech Shetzarech Lotzisi the Hamokim, in the same way that he must satisfy the scrutiny of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar v'yisem nikiyim me'Hashem u'me'Yisrael, as the pasuk says, you shall be innocent in the eyes of Hashem and of Klal Yisrael. Another pasuk says, and it furthermore says, you should find favor and good understanding in the eyes of Hashem and man. These psukim teach that even after attaining perfection in the eyes of Hashem, one must still find favor in the eyes of his fellow man. Thus, the rules mentioned above were not instituted for fear that the person performing the withdrawal would actually steal the money, but that there shouldn't be any chashash, there shouldn't be any talk of what's going on over here. And Bechlal, there's an inyan, befrat in the Beis Hamikdash, but this is an inyan that's negaya to everybody at all times. Now, it is true that we have to be done l'kavschos, but we can't do things that should be ma'ir suspicion, should be ma'ir chashas by people. Now, a person who's not down l'kavschos, a person who's chesed b'chsherim, we know is like a begufay and he's chayv levarchay, and the whole sugya there at the beginning of the 5th parak in brachas. But Emir Hashem, we'll discuss it there. Mishnah Gimel Shal Beis Ram Gamliel Hu Yenichnas v'Shikli Ben Eitz Ba'Isov. The members of Gamliel's family would hold back their contributions until just before the withdrawal was made, and then would enter the lishka where the shkalim were kept, each with his shekel between his fingers. They held their shekel between their fingers so that everyone could see that they entered the lishka to contribute their shekel and not to steal one. They would throw it onto the pile of shkalim in front of the person performing the withdrawals. And the person withdrawing the shkalim would then intentionally push it from the pile into the basket that he was filling. In this manner, they were able to make sure that their coins were among the ones that were actually used. So there's two things. They wanted to be Yotzeh v'yisem nikim me'Hashem u'me'Yisrael. And the next thing was they wanted to make sure that they should vadai be used, and it shouldn't be from the shiyare halishka, but it should be from the actual ones that were being used. Even though the withdrawal of the truma was performed on behalf of everyone who contributed a shekel, even those whose shkalim hadn't yet arrived, they wanted to make sure that they actually had. It was a source of special satisfaction to Gamliel and his family to know that their shkalim were actually used to buy offerings. I mean, this is Indian by mitzvahs, that we should be mishtadl. It's a certain mishtadl some mitzvahs that we could do now by any mitzvah to get involved in selling aliyahs. I don't know why that's the first thing that comes to mind when they sell aliyahs in shul. You can just go to reinchappen when you can. It doesn't matter if a person's going to get the aliyah anyways, but if you can stick yourself into there, then maybe kedai. Ein ha-Torem Torem ad sheyom lehem esraim ve'en omrim lo Torem shalish pa'amim. The person withdrawing a portion of the shkalim does not withdraw until he has asked the administrators of the gizborim that were standing outside the lishka, and he asked them, should I withdraw? Ve'en omrim lo, and they tell him, Torem, withdraw. 3 times he asked, and each time they responded, withdraw. After receiving permission, he would begin to withdraw the shkalim. It was the derech of the chachamim to require a 3-fold declaration before beginning a public act, as we find this by the Karban Omer, Magalzu, Exer. By Yibum and Chalitza, we have it also, Chalutz Anal. It's a derech eretz, it's a tznius, it's hanhaga of showing that the act is being done on behalf of the community. In addition, asking permission 3 times publicized that the person withdrawing the shkalim did not enter on his own initiative, it means he's asking rishos. It's a certain submissiveness in front of the other people, in front of the gizborim, or in front of the chachamim when they were doing the omer, that this is what they're going to go ahead and do. Mishnah Daled. Torah Meser Rishayim Mechape B'Ktav Lois. The Mishnah now continues the description of the procedure of withdrawing the shkalim, discussing what was done after each withdrawal took place. After he made the first withdrawal of shkalim, he would cover the remaining coins in the chamber with leather covers. That's a ketavla is a leather cover. The shkalim that arrived afterwards would be placed on top of the covers, and the next withdrawal, the next trumas halishka, would then be made from those coins. Shniya umechape b'ktavlois. Likewise, after he made the second withdrawal of shkalim, he would cover the remaining coins with additional leather covers, and the shkalim arriving afterwards would be placed on top of the second layer of covers. The third withdrawal would then be made from these newly arrived coins. Shlishis lo hayu mechape. But after the third withdrawal of shkalim, he wouldn't cover the remaining coins, since there was not going to be a fourth withdrawal. Instead, the covers would be removed, and all the money remaining in the lishka had the status of shiari halishka, which was used to purchase other things, as the Mishnah will explain in Parak Daled, which we'll see Mitzvah Shem soon. The reason he would cover the remaining coins after the first and second withdrawals and not simply place the newly arrived shkalim in a separate pile is because you might forget to put the new shkalim in a separate pile and add them instead to the old pile and withdraw shkalim the next time from the old money which already had funds withdrawn from it. Mixing the newly arrived shkalim with the old ones make it likely that the next withdrawal would remove some coins from the old group as well. They wanted to avoid that to make sure to get everyone and everything involved in as much as they can. Torah Meser Rishayna L'Shem Eretz Yisrael. The Mishnah concludes with the reason why there were 3 yearly withdrawals of shkalim. The person who withdrew the shkalim made the first withdrawal on behalf of the Yidden that were living in Eretz Yisrael, whose shkalim had arrived by the date of the first withdrawal. And he made the second withdrawal on behalf of the Yidden that were living in the cities close to Eretz Yisrael, like in the cities of Ammon and Moav, whose shkalim arrived only in time for the second withdrawal. And he made the third withdrawal on behalf of all the Yidden living in Bavel and Modai, and on all the Yidden living in all other distant countries throughout the world, whose shkalim arrived only in time for the third withdrawal. In reality, all the withdrawals of shkalim were done on behalf of all the Yidden who contributed a shekel, no matter where they lived. This was true even if the shkalim did not yet reach the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah is simply explaining why the Chacham instituted 3 different withdrawal times during the year. It was because not all the shkalim would arrive until the third withdrawal date. Although all Yidden had a share in the karbanos purchased with the shkalim withdrawn from the first Trumas Halishka, nevertheless, the Trumas Halishka 3 different times ensured that everyone shekel, no matter how far away he lived, would have a chance of actually being used to buy the karbanos. As we all talk about Parsha Shkalim every year, we talk about how the idea of the shkalim is to be koilel every Yid, no matter who, no matter where, no matter why, and that is what it is, as we're seeing now. Ad Kan.